So, building RESTful APIs, Express Middleware. Yay. All right. Good morning. So, day 3, working on your server. Hopefully, this is starting to feel natural to you, being on the other side of the internet, if you will, right? We've been on the browser all this time, so we're on this side of the internet, and then we do an just request somewhere on the internet, and we get a response. Now we're on the other side. All right, cool. So what's today? Well, we said some of the, by the way, can I ask a kind soul to create a questions thread for me on Slack so I could keep up with your questions? Remember, the goal is no question unanswered. All right, there's a questions thread. Excellent, thank you. All right, now, we said that Express is a really lightweight framework, but it can be extended using Express middleware. Maybe we didn't say exactly that, but we're saying it today, right? So Express is such a lightweight framework that some of the functionality that you expect to find in a full-blown framework is not there. So you bring it in optionally as you need it. And that's a good thing, right? It's because you don't want to pay the price for some code that you're not going to use. So you pick and choose the stuff that you need, and you assemble your server that way. Express middleware is a key part of that, because this is how you, as a developer, are going to extend your server. You might remember that we're working on this mini, right? We have been working on the mini, and one would think that the natural progression would be to continue working on this mini and adding middleware so that we could see how that works. But I want to kind of make a stop, and instead of going there, I want to get you now, because I think we're ready to move into learning some new stuff. And that is, I'm going to start on an empty folder from scratch and see how those scripts things work on the package.json. We have been using them, they're there, right? But how do you assemble one? Let's say that I tell you, I want you to build an API for me. And you're like, right, wait, we never learned to do that from scratch. And how do I do that package.json thing? So this is where we do it. We do it today, and then we introduce middleware. Sounds like a plan? Yay. All right, let's go and see some questions before we continue. Okay. Fun facts. So the other one is the question thread. This is the conversation thread. No. Question thread. Question thread. All right. So in order to start this thing from scratch, we need a terminal. So as always, I'm going to do a couple of steps, and I'm going to stop, and then you go and do them, and let me know if you have any questions or you run into any issues. Nothing so far. Let's see. I have a web. Did I call it web 14? Yep. So CD web 14. This is your folder. You own this folder on my computer. So we're going to talk about middleware. So I'm going to create a folder here, mkdir middleware. I have a hard time typing that word. So then into middleware. There you go. Right. So inside this folder, I have nothing, right, obviously. So the first thing as a developer is you want to do git init. Of course, yes, because you want to have a repository here. And of course, you want to have a .gitignore file in there. And we have that. And from here on, we could probably do the rest of the commands. We're just going to do them from code. So let's go and open Visual Studio Code. We could close this terminal, which we have a folder with only that gitignore file. In there, we're going to add node_modules. Anybody need a refresher on why we have that gitignore file? Yes, we do. Oh, cool. Yeah, so if you're on a Mac, you of course want to do that .ds_store that shows up in there. So the refresher is, well, Git is going to keep track of all the files that changed within this folder. Once you do Git init, this is a Git repository, so there's a hidden folder somewhere in there, and Git is going to keep track of every file. But what happens when you add a package? A simple package that you add a node is going to add a whole bunch of stuff that you don't really need, because why? You have a package.json, so you could just run a command and get all those packages whenever you need them. So any file that you do not want pushed to your remote repository on GitHub or whatever you're hosting that, you can ignore them by adding what is called a glob selector here. So this is a glob selector. You could see this like this. It also works. Let's say that you have a folder called config and you don't want that going in there. You could say config, right? That folder is not going to go in there. Let's say that you want to ignore anything that ends on config on any folder. You could say any folder, any file, right? It doesn't matter what it is. And then you could say something like, if it ends in dot config, I don't want it. Like, I don't even know if you need that second one. I think this should be enough. So double asterisk, I think it means any folder. So if it's inside a folder, inside a folder, inside a folder, it doesn't really matter as long as it ends. This is say any name for the file, but it ends in config. I want you to ignore it. So basically, Git is gonna know it's there, but it's just not gonna. When you do Git, let's say that I do. Let's save this real quick. New file here and call it foo.config, right? And then I'm going fast because this is a refresher of the stuff that you already saw. It's just trying to remember little things. Not this. This is not what I wanted. I wanted this, the terminal on the right. All right. So here, if I do git status, you see that I only show the git ignore, but I have more files. I have this foo.config, and the reason is this line right here. So if I comment out that line, like so, save that and do my git status again, now Git is aware of this. So when you do git add, it's gonna add that and it's gonna get pushed. You can commit it and push it. So the git ignore is gonna let you tell Git, I don't want you tracking changes to some directory, some file based on the glob syntax. What is this glob thing I keep mentioning about? Let's see. Glob syntax. See if we can find some. Glob pattern matching and working properly. Glob. Oh, maybe this. Haha. Right, here it is. So there are some ideas there, or all the patterns that you could use to pick files. Okay, so double star matches 0 or more directories. This matches a single character. Anyway, you could read through that yourself, but you use that in order to assemble your git ignore file. Say which files is Git going to ignore. Questions. We know that we only need those two to begin with. If you're on a Mac, you need that. Otherwise, that's going to be in your repository. So git status should only show me, I have this foo config now. Since it's not on the git ignore anymore, let's get rid of this. Yeah. Did I just delete the wrong file? I think I did. All right, let's rename this to .git ignore. Again. Here we go. Ready to go. Let's see the questions. Right, so where's the questions? Are we on the questions thread or on the other questions thread? I'm gonna be on the one created by chance, so you know, right? Just because it was first on the list. I got nothing against you, Alan. we ignore, the question is, do we ignore the node modules because they're too big? No, we ignore them because we don't really need them to, well, they are big, of course. So that's a lot of files that you don't want to be sending up and down the wire needlessly. But we also ignore them because we can get them back. Remember that we have this package.json, which is basically a list of all the dependencies that we need. So you keep your repository really, really light. And whenever you need the packages, you download those only on the client computer. Is there a de facto git ignore you copy into all your projects? I don't have a de facto one, but here's a little kind of insight, right? So if you go to github.com, and let's say that we're going to create a repository, new repository, and they also have gists for all the good git ignore files depending on your technology. And let's say that we call this middleware MW, just because it's hard for me to type it. So this is my MW project. You see this here? You could find, let's say that you get a job and you're working on C# instead, you could say either .NET, I think it's there, no, but C# maybe, like so. All right, so let's find it. I think it's .NET. It should be .NET. Why isn't it .NET? Oh, come on. It should be a .NET thing there. All right, so I was wrong. I thought there was a C# .NET thing in here. It's in there, trust me. All right, anyways, let's say that we want Node, right? So we're creating a Node project. So you type Node, and when you do that, this is gonna add a git ignore to your repository from the get-go that is fully configured for Node. So when you create that, it's gonna be an initial commit in there somewhere. And if you open that, this is a good one for you to start because it has a lot of good stuff for Node. Little things like .env that we're going to talk about later. Of course, the Node repository, .npm, some catches, and of course, the logs, all of those errors from Yarn for npm. Pretty nice. So you could use that. That's a good way. If you're working on Java, they also have for Java. They have for, I'm sure they have for .NET. Also, you could say GitHub .git ignore, I think. Git ignore, and they have a whole bunch of them there. So if you go into this, go into git ignore, it should be a big list of all of them. So let me drop this on Slack. Someone please drop those in the notepad, right? So you could go in here and pick the ones that you want. You could go and read it and see what they have. Like if you're working with Elm, click on this one, and this is the stuff that they are ignoring for Elm. All right, any more questions? So how is the node modules director not being watched different in the day of package.log files? It does help quite a bit with accurate version, but does it change anything about which files needed to be tracked? No, it did not. So he's talking about package.log. So if I go to get a little bit of context for people in the video, if I go here and say npm, first we need to have a package.json, npm init-y, so that I don't have to answer all those questions, it just creates one by default. And then I do npm init, npm install, let's say express, like so. A couple of things are going to happen. If you look here, there's going to be another file created here once they finish installing Express, right? There you go, package.log.js. And then you have the package.json, and the package.json only says I have Express. That's a dependency. This is a production dependency because it's under the dependencies list. If it is something that is only for development, it would be under dev dependencies, and we'll see that when we look at NodeMon. So this thing is respecting. Do you know why this little caret is there and what does that mean? Of course, some of you may, some of you may not. So if you go and check, is it semver.io? I know this is not totally related to Node, but still it's good information for you as a developer. Okay, I don't remember if this is, no, this is not. So semantic versioning. I totally forget what the, oh man, come on, really? Didn't know I was going to talk about this today, so semver, that's what I want. Is it org? Is it, how can I not get like, is it org? Semver.org? Maybe. Ah, there you go. So here we go. Semantic versioning. So the idea as a software developer, we came to the realization that some companies were using some numbering in a different way than others. So we came up with this idea of every software version, if you respect semantic versioning, we're kind of adding meaning to those three numbers. So the first number is a major version. That means when you make some changes that are going to break people's code, you should bump up that number. Even if it's just one little change, and you're like, how can I go from version 2 to version 3 and when I only change one line of code? Well, you broke people's code. If you do, you have to let them know by bumping up that number. A minor version, which is the second number right here in your software, would mean you may have added new functionality, but that functionality is not gonna break people's code. It's backwards compatible, right? And the patch version is you found a bug, or you're making some kind of fix, or it doesn't have to be like a nasty bug, but it may be a small change that you're doing that is not really adding functionality, more like adjusting something, even if it's not a bad bug. And then in those cases, you adjust this last one, which is called the patch. This is why you'll see software that has like version 2.5 point, you know, like in Windows, you're like 93,242 on how many little changes they have on bug fixes they have done to that 2.5 version. Now, on the package.json though, you will see that we have these weird characters, like an upper, like a that caret, point up, a chevron, like none at all. What else do they have? Do they? Okay, so let's see. Where would I go? Let me drop this in Slack. It would be npm package JSON version. I don't know truly where this thing is, the documentation for this thing. I don't remember ever looking for it anyway. So let me see if I can find the version here. All right, so this means exactly that version, but then you have others. Oh, they don't have it in there. I have to find it. I don't want to like take a lot of time on this. So I'm gonna kind of talk to you about it, and then someone will, I'm sure, find a reference where they explain what every little thing means. It's somewhere in the npm documentation, so we'll find it later. But this is saying any version 4.16.4 or above within the 4 major version. So when they come up with 5, I believe when you come up with 5, this is not going to add it, right? But there are different, I don't know them by heart, so I just check them whenever. So this is what those little characters mean. This is how can you can even restrict it to a particular 4.16 and not have like 4.17 if you don't want to. So this little caret here, this little symbol is going to change and it's going to have some meaning. So we'll find a reference for that because I don't know them by heart. That's the idea, right? Now, understanding that you have that, That means that at some point, if you have something like this, you're going to get anything on version 4. But what happens if whoever is writing the package doesn't really obey or follow this semantic versioning recommendations, and they come up with a 4.2 or 4.20 version of the software that breaks the build, that breaks people's code? It should have been 5.0, I know, but what if they don't follow semantic versioning? Now you have a problem where your application is, next time someone clones the repository, they're gonna do npm install, and they're gonna end up with a different version than the one that everybody else is using. Everybody else downloaded that run npm install once, and they got 4.16.4. Then a week later, someone else downloads the exact same repository, does npm install, and gets a totally different version of Express. That may be different, may be broken. So now you have, on the same code base, two different developers with different packages and different behavior. And that's really, really bad, right? That's one of the problems that Yarn set out to solve. But now it's solved on NPM too. And the idea is that we did not have certainty that the term that they use is the installation of the packages was not deterministic. You could not guarantee that every developer on the team is going to have the same exact version of all the packages you have there. So that was the problem before. So it was tricky, okay? Some companies, in order to solve that problem, decided to just upload their node. Like someone will download it the first time, and then they would just upload their node modules packages, 80, 100, 120 megs of files, little files in there, just because they wanted to guarantee that everybody had the same versions at all times. But this is a problem that has been solved already, right? Because if you go check package digestion, this guarantees basically two things. The first thing is that the packages are installed on the same order. So whoever, like in my case, it would be me, right? I install this package, so this package that log.json got created. And if you're using Yarn, it would be the yarn.log. And this is going to document how the packages, which order they should be installed, and what exact version was installed, right? So they kind of keep control of that. So the next developer that downloads this after I push this with this package that JSON in there, the next developer that does npm install is going to go through the same exact steps that I went to on installing the packages. So their installation and mine are going to be the same. So we're not going to have those weird bugs just because of minor changes on the versions. Does that make sense? So we are safe now to always ignore node modules, because we pretty much know that using the latest versions of NPM or Yarn, we're always going to get the same exact set of dependencies with the same versions. Yep. So that was the biggest selling point for Yarn in the beginning. Also, the whole idea of downloading dependencies in parallel. So they open separate threads. So it actually worked a lot faster than older versions of NPM. I don't know if that's the case still, though. I think NPM adopted both the lock and also the idea of downloading packages in parallel, but I'm not sure. Can you break your code by manually changing the version numbers? Yes, if you bring in a version that is wrong, you can break your code, of course. Only remember by changing this, that doesn't mean that the dependencies are going to be updated. You're still using the ones that you have in there until you do an npm upgrade or another npm install, because the npm install is always going to go through this and try to get the versions that you have specified here. This was more of a problem when different developers or a developer run npm install at different points, like npm I, not downloading a package, but doing like npm I to kind of refresh all the packages. But whenever you do that, it will check and say, hey, some packages needed to be updated. So it will change it to whatever version you brought in here. So you could definitely break your code that way if you bring the wrong version. So how do I update Node on Windows? Through Git? No, you just go back to nodejs.org. Those are really good questions, because those are little things that you as a developer want to kind of have on your belt. So you just come back to, in Windows, I mean, there is a package manager called Chocolatery or something like it. Let me see, Chocolatery. I never used it. Chocolately, maybe. Chocolately. No, again, never used it. So there is a package, I don't know what the name of it is, that you can use on Windows that will behave kind of like packaging, like package manager on Linux, and something like Homebrew for the Mac, which is what I use. And it does this. But other than that, you just come and bring, like if I want to run this in Windows 11.1, I would just come and download the latest, and it will update it for me when running the install again. On the Mac, I use Homebrew. So he asked about Windows, Luis. Why are you talking about the Mac? Well, because it's cool. If you're not using Homebrew, you should be. So I have a brew update. It's gonna tell me any new packages. It's probably gonna give me an error just because they have a problem with their staging thing. It's a known issue. But this kinds of goes into their server and check the latest version of every package that you could contain installed through Homebrew and compare to the versions that I have on my system. So they're gonna get the new list, and later when I say upgrade, it's gonna take all my packages and just upgrade it to the latest version automatically. So what I do is I have a command on my saved that I just say brew up, and it will do both. So let's go back to the code. There you go. So this is a error that we get, but we could just, there's a command to solve this problem. This is a known issue for them. So it's called Chocolately. Ah, okay. So Chocolately. There you go. Thank you. Is that a reason I now prefer the Mac for development? Nope. I'm doing it for consistency, because everybody else, up until you got to me, everybody else was on the Mac. So I kind of started like sticking out like a sore thumb everywhere, including the including the staff channel. Like everybody else on the Mac, and Luis is the weird guy. So I succumb to peer pressure. No, I just want to keep the consistency, because you've been used to seeing the Mac. I may jump on Windows here and there. I don't know, maybe to spice things up a little bit. That's the only reason. My Windows computer is my everyday computer. I bought this when going through the bootcamp just because they said, bring this in because you're going to need a Mac. And then I realized I didn't. But then I had spent the money already. So, yeah. All right. Let's go back to code. All right. This is a nice conversation. If you have any more questions, I'm still on the questions thread. Let me see. So Yarn add adds dependencies to the package.yay. So Yarn install updates all dependencies on the red. Yeah, you don't even need the install on Yarn. You can just say Yarn, and it will go through all the dependencies and update them. Just install all the packages. It will do a refresh, basically. So Yarn, that's it. All right. So we did an npm init-y because that generated this package.json by default, okay? And we can, just for fun, let's continue using an npm. It's the same using Yarn, right? So since we already have that package that login yet. All right, so this is Express, and we install Express, but we know that we're going to use NodeMon, right? Because otherwise, every time we run, let's go and try this. I'm going to create a script. And remember, this is now the learning. We have this thing called scripts, and I'm going to show you why this is important. Let me first see if I have NodeMon in here. So if I type nodemon, it's in there. So let's stop it and do yarn global remove nodemon npm uninstall .g nodemon, maybe. Okay, so nodemon, come on, did I need to say that it uninstalled this? So yarn, it is removed, right? There you go. Maybe I made a typo before. So what I'm doing is I'm removing my global installation of this package. So hopefully nodemon, there you go. See, when I type nodemon now, it's telling me I don't have this file or directory. So that's no longer there. It's not installed in my system. So I cannot use it globally, okay? And this is important because before I could just type nodemon here and it will go and look into my package.json, look for that script in here and see whatever main file, not the script, sorry, for this main file here and try to run this index.js. Let's see that in action, right? So let's create a file, index, and someone mentioned something about server.js. So I'm going to create a new file called server.js instead of index.js. And if I run this, and let's go into the server.js and say console.log run, okay? That's all I have in that file. If I want to run this with Node, hey, where's my prettier not console.log run? Well, okay, should have added my, there you go. So I can run this by saying node server.js. And it ran. You can see the message right there. Cool. Also, you could do nodemon. And what happens is if I run this and then I go and make a change, run the server. Of course, if you want to see that change, you have to run it again using Node because you're already done. You finished running the program. So what we do is we do nodemon, right? Nodemon. But what happens is, it's not there. I can't use it because it's not installed. And nodemon is also going to try to run this index.js. So one way to go around that is inside of your Node modules, there's this bean folder here, .bean. There's nothing in there yet, right? There's no package that you could run from the command line from a script inside of package.json. So I'm going to add into this project npm I uppercase D, that means as a def dependency nodemon. Node, double M. That's what happened. Here you go. The right package name, Luis. Hey, we should probably create that package, node mmon. Just to grieve a little bit. And that package would just say, did you mean nodemon? Oh, I don't know. This probably would have been a lot faster with using yarn. All right, there you go. So now it's installed here as a dev dependency. Excellent. Let's go run it. Let's say nodemon. No such file or directory. It's not there, right? Because it's not installed globally on my system. But what if I have developers on my team that don't want to have, they want to be able to use my project and use nodemon with it because it's cool, it refreshes automatically, but they don't want to install nodemon globally on that computer. So what can they do then? Well, we have it installed and it's already in here. If you go and look into that bin folder again, refresh, it should be, I don't even know if that installs that bin there. There should be a nodemon. You see that nodemon there? This is executable now. This is a symbolic link. So we should be able to execute that from the command line if we run it from a script. So now I could say server here, and here say nodemon. And again, I'm going to leave just nodemon, nothing else. It's the same thing that I'm running from here, okay? It's running the same command. This is going to run on the terminal. But there's a difference now. This is going to run this nodemon from the bin folder. So when I do npm run server, it's actually going to run nodemon. Look at that. It ran nodemon. But then it's telling me I cannot find index.js. And the reason for that is nodemon by default is going to go and look at this main file here and trying to execute that. So what can I change on my package.json so that when I run npm run server, nodemon finds my server.js file? Yeah, we could either go in here and say nodemon server.js. That's a way of doing it. Oh, this is really interesting. Someone got unmuted, okay? So I could do this and that will work, okay? Let's go run it again and it will run. There you go. We should get that. There you go, ran the server. So that worked, okay? That's one way. And notice that I had to stop nodemon in order for it to pick up the new configuration because this runs when nodemon begins. Any changes here, it's not gonna be aware of. That's one way. The other one is, maybe we just leave this at nodemon and then we change this to be server.js. So now we tell nodemon the entry point, the first file that you should run from this application is server.js. So now npm run server will go and execute nodemon, but on server.js, and it works also. What we're trying to do here is demystify this package.json a little bit and understand, because there is power on using these scripts. Now you can run nodemon just because you have it as a dependency locally on this folder. You could run it from here using a script without having to have it locally, globally installed. Now, as a version 5 point something, npm also have something called npx. Okay, so that got mentioned on the channel. And npx is a way for you to use a package without permanently installing it globally. So you could do npx nodemon. And what this happens is on the fly, not npmx, npx. On the fly, it will go into the npm register, find the nodemon packages, download it, catch it somewhere, run it from there once, right? Without you having to install it globally. This is another solution, and this is also going to work. See, it's running it without me having to install it globally. But this is downloaded the package from the internet. You already have it here on your hard drive. So in some cases, and you will see, sometimes you have errors. You try to install a package and it's giving you a problem. Maybe you're on a computer and you don't have access to install global packages in there. This is a good alternative in those cases when you you cannot install global packages or don't want to, and you cannot change the package.json, but you still want to take advantage of running something like nodemon. So in those cases, npx is really useful. I would say, if you can, have a script for it and have it as a dev dependency so that everybody can use it from your repository without any issues. So normally this would be index.js. This would be nodemon, and it's going to run index by default. And then you would have your index.js file. And I'm going to start changing things a little bit here. I'm going to create a new folder called API, and I'm going to drop my server in there. And what I want to do is inside that index, I want to do something like this. I want to bring my server from the /API server.js. You will see the examples without the .js, and that's okay. Note the engine by default is going to start looking for files. If you just say server, it's going to say, do I have a server.js? If not, do I have a server.json.js? It's not. So it's going to go and look for 3 or 4 different files. I don't remember what they are. But it's going to find any JS file first. And if not, it's going to go into JSON second, I think, or maybe JSM second. But I want to save my engine from doing that extra work. There's not needed. I just say specifically, I meant server.js, go and get that. And that's it, right? So both work the same. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, this is going to be the starting point of my application. And this is going to kind of kick things up, but my server is going to be here instead. So I'm requiring that server. And now I'm going to say server.listen. So this is the guy that is going to kind of turn on the server, but it's not going to define the server. It's going to turn it on. Server.listen in a port, and then, you know, my console log that I always like to have in there. Actually, we just do this. Let's do this and change this baby to be backticks instead. That did not work. There we go. So this is a common pattern that you'll see. 2 different concerns. One is I'm gonna run the server, and then the other one is I'm gonna define what the server is. Okay, get rid of this. There you go. This is a nice pattern to have, because when you do testing, this is gonna become really, really important in a couple of weeks. But for now, get used to having a separate server and a separate index.js. So your job is, go on, we have some minutes before we start talking about middleware. Go and create a folder. Do your npm, you know, you git init, do your npm init-y, so you generate the package.json, assemble, you know, change your script, organize this any way you want, it doesn't have to be that way, and create your index.js file that is going to import a server, and then have that server somewhere. It could be in the same folder, it could be in, you know, like I did it here, like API server.js. So go and do that. And then wire up. See, what we're doing now, so far, we're not doing anything with this. Like if I run this, sorry, npm run, because we're doing npm today. Server, giving npm some love. This is what we're doing. This is going to say, hey, you have a problem. You're kind of listening on something, but I'm not exporting anything, right? This is not really exporting anything. So let's fake this. Let's say module.exports is going to be an object. It's going to have a listen function that does this. Totally ignores the, it should take a port and a callback, I guess. And then it's going to do a console log and then call the callback. Port, listen, listen, exports, listen, callback. Oh, interesting. Port, oh, the port. I did not define the port. I did not define the port. So let's do 9,000 directly. We're not there yet. Hey, look at that. Run the server, and the API is running on port 9,000. index server, go. Of course, what we're really gonna do is bring in Express and use it, but for now, we just want to be able to run something in here. You could do Yarn init to create a package.json using Yarn. I just don't use it because the package.json that you get doesn't have things like the scripts object. So it's forcing me to add things that I always want. So I use npm init instead. It makes a more complete package.json. If you do use Yarn init, you're gonna have to manually add this stuff, the scripts, just so you know. So the other question is, how do you get the package.log.json? As soon as you install a package, in my case, I installed Express and then Nodemon. As soon as you install a package, you're gonna get the package.log.json, package-log.json. If you use npm, if you're using Yarn, you're gonna do the yarn.log instead. Is npx like yarn create? I don't know what yarn create does, so I can't answer that one. But npx is just a way for you to run npm packages from the command line without having to install them globally. That's what it does. I don't know what yarn create does. So many things I don't know. Sorry. So what is the difference between a dependency and a dev dependency? A dependency is something that's going to go on production. So a dev dependency is something that you will use only during your development time. So if you were to package this application as an NPM module, the dev dependencies will not be part of that because you don't need them in order to run your application in production. So always install things that you only need for development as a dev dependency, and only keep as dependencies the things that you want to go to production, that you need in production. So in npm-i, those are questions I did not expect, tell you the truth. I thought by now you would be like npm installation masters. So npm-i is the same as npm install. It's just a short version of npm install. And then you could do --say, I think it's save dev, meaning this is going to be a dev dependency, but you could shorten that and just do npm-i uppercase D and then the package name, like Nodemon. And that means install it as a dev dependency. Shorthand. Keep in common. I want to see all of those little questions of things that we might think that you already know, but if you don't, yes, please ask them. It's important. So if you're getting an invalid package name, it's probably because you have a typo like I did. Remember that I had those double M's on Nodemon? So maybe there's a little typo there somewhere. Check for that. So Yasmin, does that make sense now? The I and the uppercase D? So if you do something like npm I or npm init or yarn init, you're going to get a series of questions asked. So instead of doing that, this is why I prefer to do npm init -y, meaning answer yes to everything. So it's going to take some default values, like you see, like the version is going to be 1.00. The name is going to be the same name as the folder. So it's going to make some decisions for me, like the license is going to be ISE by default. So doing -y is going to save you from having to, answer a question, click enter, answer the question, click enter, enter. So chance, that's why. If you did not use the -y, you're gonna have to answer some questions. Hitting enter though, in all those questions, it's gonna give you the default values anyway. So you just do enter, 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 enter until you get the package.json file. Oh, sorry, the index.js file, that's what I have in there. So what you're supposed to have so far is, I want you to understand the process of, I go from scratch, and I'm gonna be using packages, so I want to have that package.json in there. So how do I go from 0 to a working application and a working server? So far, all we have done is making sure that you have your package.json, and I created this server file and this index.js file. And I have my package.json configured to use NodeMon as part of a script. So the learning here is, how do I get started, get my package.json in there? How can I configure scripts so that I can run packages from those scripts? And how can I install packages locally for development time that I don't have to have globally in order to use, by using them through a script? So your job, your mission, should you upset, would be, to have that configured so that you can do npm run server that will use NodeMon to start up your server using index.js file. But instead of running the server from there or assembling the server there, what you're doing is importing the server and listening inside index, but then you will have your server later defined here. So far, we're just sending out an object so we could call listen on it. So we're faking that server. Yeah. The question, how can I install the dependencies with yarn? --dev. You could do uppercase D also. So yarn add, and then in the case of npm, you could have that -d, -g anywhere. In the case of yarn though, you have to do it always in the same order. So you would do NodeMon, and then either this or like that, --dev or --dev. So that's the command for installing dev dependencies. I like yarn. I normally use yarn, but since we started using npm, we just switch it up a little bit, right? You may be in a company where they decided to use npm instead. So it's good that you get familiar with the basic commands of both. What's the command to get the log file? No command. As soon as you install a package, you will get that log automatically. And the reason it happens when you install the package is because the whole idea of the log file is what? Is to keep a track of the order of installation of the packages and the versions. So if you have no packages yet, there's no reason to have a log file. We have it because we installed NodeMon and we installed Express. That's why we have it. That is very strange. That you don't have a. Do you have a package.json file, Chance? Or maybe just hit refresh. Make sure that you show it, that you see it. Or maybe you have an old version of npm prior 4.0, maybe. Oh, on Visual Studio Code, yeah, and you hover in here, there's this refresh button right here. And you could close all the folders too on this one. So refresh. So if you're using Yarn, you should have a yarn.log file in there. Yeah. So package.log.json is created by npm because I'm using npm. But people using Yarn are going to have a yarn.log instead. Yeah, makes sense. That's a good question. This is, yeah. And I show my package.json file. Of course. As a matter of fact, I could do better. I could show them all at the same time. Look at that. And close the terminal, and then wait, not that. This one. Now you have everything. So create a folder, cd into folder, and git init, not related. You know, this thing though, not related to Node or npm at all. Then we do npm init -y or yarn init -y. And then after you have that, we update with the script to use NodeMon to run index.js. Set things. Let's call this the steps. Okay. And these are the commands right here. So once we did that, we installed NodeMon as a dev dependency. Two ways of doing this: npm I, uppercase D, NodeMon, or we could use yarn, add NodeMon as the dependency, or dash dash def. I like this one. I don't know why. Okay. This is where we are. We also created index.js and API/server.js, and you have the files on screen, the content of those files on screen. This is where kind of we are so far. Actually, it's more accurate that way. NPM6, can they use NPX with Yarn? No, NPX is its own thing. You don't need Yarn for that. NPX is just an executable that you could run. When you have NPM installed, it's going to have the newer versions of NPM. It's going to have NPX installed by default too. So no need for Yarn for that. It comes with NPM. Can we take a break? Well, let's see. Yes, no. Running. If everyone is running, then we go for a 5-minute break and then come back and talk about middleware. I don't know. I never heard that song, so I don't know if it's appropriate for all audiences. No, I'm gonna have you on during the break. Just listen to whatever you want on your own, right? It's just for the mornings. How do we run? What have we been running since the beginning of time? Since the React time, how do we run stuff using our scripts? We have some more questions, but everybody, well, Adam is not. What's going on, Adam? Can he help you fix this? What seems to be the error? npm run, and whatever the script name is, in our case, it would be server or yarn server to run, to execute. And yes, if you used yarn init instead of npm init, then you don't have these scripts, right? This is why I said I prefer npm because it will generate more for me. So I use npm init instead of yarn init. If you use yarn init, you don't have it. So you need to create it manually. You just add it in there before trying to run it. Yeah. We still have someone that is not running. So I want to make sure that I know what it is. I'm stopping you. How do we get the log file? As soon as after you have your package.json, right? First thing you do, this is the order, right? You do npm init -y, or if you want yarn init, using yarn, add the scripts manually to package.json. Okay. So this is the order. And you update the package.json with the script to use nodemon. So you can run index.js. This would be this script right there. We call the server. Then we installed nodemon as a dev dependency. This step right here should generate either yarn.log if you're using yarn or a package.log if you're using npm, this package -log.json. So things done in this order should have you in the same spot that we are. If not, something's missing from that order there. Then we created those two files. You have the code there. And then npm run server or yarn server to execute. And of course, you should be seeing this, API running on port, and then the run the server thing too. This is the content of the git ignore. All right, so let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and talk about today's lecture, which is actually not what we've done so far. It's middleware. And we're back. All right. Let's see if we pick up some of the questions still lingering there. Let me bring in the code. I'll make sure that we have all the steps here visible on the screen. So if you don't have a gitignore file, just create one. Right-click, new file, and name it .gitignore. And then just add this stuff in there. That's it. And remember this git init, and this is us giving a kind of a workflow, right? From nothing to building a server. Since you're gonna be using Git, I want you to get into the habit of doing git init right away and adding that git ignore so that you ignore the stuff that you don't want to send to your repository on GitHub or whatever. You might be thinking, this is all confusing, too many little things, Luis. Why are you making us go through this trouble when we should be learning about middleware? So if you're asking yourself that question, here's the reason. You need to know this stuff. Simple as that. As a developer, right? You're expected that you know this stuff. That you could go from here, empty file system, go and create an application. Those little nuances about why do we have those scripts? Why can I type? This is gonna demystify. Why can you run create React app? Let's go do that just because, you know, why not? Let's go and say, inside of this folder that I have in here, I'm gonna say create crap. I have an alias called crap. So I crop out applications. Crap a client for this. And then create React app is generating a folder. Look at it right there. It's called client. And this create React app utility is doing a lot of magic for you. So at the end of the day, you will see that you have this package.json. Once it's done, it's going to do an npm install to grab all of the packages. You see it? Now we got the node modules. So it basically went ahead and do an npm init in there, added all the stuff that you needed on the package.json, then run npm install or yarn install, and now it's downloading packages. This is going to start, you know, getting filled up with a lot of packages. Here they are coming in. And then it's going to run some of those packages. If we start looking at this, all we have is this so far. Private true, that's all we have there. But this is going to change. It's going to bring in some other stuff. That's going to change that. Yeah, see? Now it's changing. Now this is bringing some other stuff. Some dependencies, some dev dependencies. Let me close this so we can see a little more of that. This package.json is now inside our folder. Let me close all of this. And why can I type start when I say yarn start? Because of this. So what really happened is that it is running these React scripts, but you don't have that installed globally. How can I find it? Well, because it is a dependency. So this React scripts gets installed, and then you're going to run that passing the start command to it. You did not have to worry about any of that, but you know that you could run, you know, yarn test, yarn build, yarn eject, and yarn start when you do create React app. This is the reason why. Now you know how to do that. How can you do something so that you could do yarn whatever or npm run whatever, just adding it to the scripts. This is groundbreaking stuff for you guys, for sure, right? All right. So let's talk about middleware, and this is gonna come to you, okay? This is stuff that we want you to start learning and getting used to building your stuff. Okay. We're gonna leave that client in there. We're not gonna use it for now. Let's go back to our server. So we know that our index.js, all it's doing is requiring this server and then it's running it. So we can kind of forget about it. We're just gonna have it in there. So let's go into the server because this is the stuff where the stuff is gonna happen here. So we're no longer gonna export that. This is going to be our server now. We're gonna talk about middleware. So rem for, no, not that. Gonna bring in Express. This is gonna be our server. Now, down here, I wanna export this server, okay? Why? Because we're bringing it in down here to run it. So it's gotta be there. Now we're practicing what we did yesterday. We require that, so we export it here. I'm making a pause here, right? Waiting to see if I see some questions. No questions? I shall continue then. This is all clear. Keep an eye up here. This is our server. All right. But normally you create the server and then you configure middleware. And this is for you to extend the functionality of your server. And then you configure endpoints. Normally, this is how it goes. If you go and take a quick look at Training Kit, you'll see that there's some information about middleware, what it is, why it's important. It's important because this is how I want you're going to read through this. So I'm just going to go quickly and tell you, middleware is how you extend the functionality of your application. This is you adding some code that is going to extend Express without having to modify the source code of Express. So you're teaching your application, you're teaching the framework Express new tricks. Okay? 3 basic types. There are 4, but 3 basic types that we want you to worry about for now. Built-in. A good example of built-in middleware would be express.json. This teaches Express how to parse the body of the request into JSON object, into JavaScript object in our request object, right? There is third-party middleware. This is middleware that we bring from someone else. Someone else, we just npm install a piece of middleware and then we can require it and then use it in our code. That's the other type. And then the other one is custom middleware. This is middleware that we write ourselves. We don't npm install it, we create a file and we, build that middleware in there. There are some examples, of course. The canonical example, express.json, some third party, and you have 3 examples here. We're gonna start using this one called Helmet. It's for security. We'll see it again on authentication week, but for now, just know that these are 3 packages. Do you have links in there? Let me open one of those. And this basically configures some basic security for your server by just adding 2 lines of code. You install the middleware using npm or yarn, and then you bring it in and then use it like so. And that's it. This is going to give some security. Of course, you can configure that, right, with some other stuff, but out of the box, this is going to make your server more secure. We're not going to go into the details yet, but doing this is a good idea. So let's go and see how that's done, right? So the first thing is we need to install it so that we can require it. So helmet. Now that we have it, we configure our middleware here. So way to configure middleware, you remember that, right? Server.use helmet. That's it. Of course, this is going to fail unless we install it. So let's do an npm I helmet. We want this in production. So we're going to install as a production dependency. Once this is done, we're going to save this. This is going to restart. And we'll have helmet. Here you go. Save. Perfect. So this is how you use third-party middleware. There's another one called Morgan. Let's install this one. Rem Morgan is Morgan. So how do I use it? Don't worry, you'll do it in a minute. So server that use Morgan. Normally you pass it some configuration in here. I'm gonna pass dev, I think. It may be dev. I'm gonna pass yeah, I think it's dev. Let's try that. See if that works. Of course, we don't have that installed yet, so let's go and install it. See, we get that error. npm I Morgan. And let's see what Morgan does for us. On the example and training kit, I called it logger. But you don't have to. You could call this anything you want. You could give it any name you want. The example and training kit was going through a couple of steps where I build a logger manually first. And then I say, oh, by the way, there is a package that already does that. And so we just said, instead of running this, creating a logger manually, we're using Morgan instead because it's more complete. So let's see what it does. Let's configure an endpoint. And I always start by having a sanity check. So the get route to / it's gonna go res.status 200 and then return something there saying API running. Okay. We save that and go and hit our API. All right, server is running. Let's go see now our command line. Oh, look at this. We have some new stuff in here. Who's doing this? Morgan is doing this. Morgan is a logger. And you can even capture that and save the log to a database. So this is going to give you a record of every request that comes into the server after, on any endpoints or any middleware, anything that it's going to process requests after you use that middleware. So if I do this and hit that endpoint, let's see, we restart it, right? Let's go back, refresh the server. Look, I hit the endpoint, but I did not get this. And the reason is, and this is the first lesson of this, order in here, I'm going to add something here, uppercase. Order matters. Okay. They will execute up, how do I say, you know, top button to button, like that. Like so. So the way that it is set up now, every request is going to flow through all of the middleware. And by the way, endpoints, route handlers are middleware. There's just another piece of middleware. Means the great secret is that in Express, most of the functionality of Express is implemented as middleware. There's no secret. You have a set of functions. You remember the reducers? It is the exact same concept. Every action flows through all of the reducers. Now, the reducer is going to check the action type and decide whether it wants to do something or not. In Express, it's the exact same thing. Instead of having a collection of reducers, what you have is a collection of middleware functions. They're going to take a peek at the request, and they're going to decide whether they care about it or not. So order matters, right? You need to have your middleware in the right order. If you want to log every request, you need to have this Morgan thing at the top of the list so that it gets every request before everybody else handles it. Okay? Now, please go and implement this. Bring in Morgan and a helmet. Use them at your endpoint and run a request to see if you get here, like go to the browser and do a get to the local host, and you should see this right there. See how they're different now, right? The first one was a 200. The 304 means there were no changes, so I'm not going to send you anything new because it's already there. But the first time around that I ran it, there was nothing. So you get the 200, and then you get this. This is Chrome. Google Chrome does this by gonna do, and this is one of the things that get confusing. Sometimes you're like, you get an endpoint, you do a get request from the browser, and you're like, why am I getting 2 requests? What is this? This is Chrome. Chrome by default is gonna try and get a favorite icon to show on the tab. So you saw that happen the first time I hit that website, and then we got this photo for saying there is no favorite icon in there, so it knows about it now, so it's not gonna try it again. This is Chrome doing it, the browser. If you do this from Postman, this is not gonna happen. You will get only 1 request. And then after that, what Google Chrome did is it catched the request. So when you do the next get, it sees the response and say, okay, it's the same response. So it's just going to give you a 304. Morgan is a logger. All Morgan does is read the request and give you information about it, depending on what configuration you use, the configuration that you're using here. There is another one called, I think, short. So look at how this looks, right? The information that you have in there. I'm going to save that, do another request. And now look at the difference, see? The information that you get depends on whatever value you pass as the format, I guess. This is now giving you the IPv6 and more extra information about the request, like the protocol that you use, HTTP 1.1. Okay. Now, how Morgan works is not the goal of understanding here. Morgan is just looking at the request and doing a console log by default, but you could capture that and save it on a database. And this is important because you could keep a record of every request coming into your server and the results of that request, what happened there, right? So you could check, you could find, hey, am I getting another 500 errors? And you could see where are they visiting those 500 errors? And you could have information like, what's the IP of the client? What information did they send on the value of the request? So that's what Morgan does. This is something that you'll see there. But what's important here is that we added that extra functionality to our Express application without having to write new code for it in the Express framework. So we extended the things that the Express framework can do without having to modify the source code. We just took a piece of middleware that someone else wrote and used it from our Express application. And that's it. We have this new piece of information that we get now. So that is the second type. The first one is built in, right? So when we did server.use express.json, that's built in, part of the Express framework. This is third party. Now, the next piece of middleware that we're going to care about is custom. Doesn't have to be in this file, remember that. Doesn't have to be in this file. I'm going to write it here so it's easy to see. I'm going to write one piece of custom middleware to illustrate the point. And that's it. Then we're going to go into questions. So let's see if we have any problems so far. And instead, I'm going to give you this. This is going to be your server.js. Because there's nothing particularly groundbreaking in here. Make sure that you install Helmet and Morgan and Express, of course, those three packages. By the way, did you know that you could do this? Like npm I express space helmet space Morgan, or yarn add express helmet Morgan, and it will install all packages. Cool. And remember that your index is just requiring that server and just running it on port 9000. You're learning a little bit every day, a little bit. Yeah. All right, so let's do it. Let's do it, Paul, before I continue. It runs. Yay. Let me know if it runs. Thumbs up keeps moving forward. All right. People on the video missing on the good stuff on Slack. Funny stuff. Okay, I'm looking at the questions thread. Hopefully I'm not missing any question in there because people are just helping each other out, which is awesome. All right. So custom middleware, let's take 10 minutes and write a piece of custom middleware that does practically nothing, right? Just to illustrate the point. All right. A custom middleware is a function. It's going to sound like I'm explaining reducers. It's a function. So any function, it could be an arrow function, any function. And we're going to call this function gatekeeper. Okay, gatekeeper. So in order for it to be middleware, it doesn't have to be at this level, but ultimately it's a function that is going to take at least 3 parameters. You remember the next, you remember that, you saw that before, right? Not in the context of Express, but you remember what it does. And again, these are positional in nature. The name doesn't really matter. What matters is the position. The first one, and I said at least, notice how I say at least, because there is another type of custom middleware that could take 4 parameters. So it would be a quartet instead of a trio. This used to be a duo before, right? The homies, now is the homies trio. Request, response, and next. So here's how this works. Let's say that I come in here and do something like if rec.body.password. Wow. Is melon. I don't know if it's like that or like this. I'm gonna assume that it's like this. I think it's like this. Melon, then otherwise, now this word melon now makes sense after you saw that, right? Right. Okay. So let's see what happens. This is not complete, but it is kind of, there. Now, since this is middleware and I have it defined, this could be anywhere, right? I could just use it now. I could say, I want to use my middleware. My gatekeeper middleware. Nice. Now, every request that goes into my server is going to look for this rec.body.password. And if it's not there, then we're going to get you shall not pass. Let's try this. And the first thing I want you to notice is this. You see that? Over here? The circle of doom. Just spinning and spinning. And it's gonna time out eventually. It's gonna try and try and try and try and eventually give you a timeout error. Why is that? Well, any ideas why that is? Yeah, the server is not responding with anything. Okay. So this is not gonna work. Even though we do get this, you shall not pass, we're never sending a response back to the server. So instead of doing this, let's start changing things around. Let's say we have access to the response, so I could just say res.send, you shall not pass. Let's try that out. It's pretty nice, right? So we're gonna do a refresh now. And now we get you shall not pass. All right, this is good, this is good. But what if I wanna do a post instead? So let's go back and pull out our trusty friend, Postman. And we're going to do a, actually, we could do it with a get. What can we use so that we could send some data to the server, like the password, without having to have a post, without needing a body? What can I use for that? Query string, yay! All right, so let's do this. From rec.query, I want to find the pass key, and I want to check if that is melon. Let's try it. Let's try that. Okay, let's go back into the server. Do a refresh. We still get you shall not pass. But what if I go in here and do colon pass equals melon? Right? We assemble a query string with pass with the value of melon. That should work. So let's do that. Hit enter. And we go back to our console. We'll see that we have welcome travelers. So that totally worked, but still we're not executing anything. And this is where this next comes in here. Next is pointing. Next points to the next middleware route handler in the queue. So if I want to allow that request, to go into the next route handler or middleware, which is this right here. If I want to get here from this point, I need to call next. So just by calling next here, that will fix it. We're not going to call next in this case, though. Why? Because if we call next, first, we already send the response. This isn't going to work. But if I do like a console log and then call next in here, I'm still letting people go through to the next step, which is whatever endpoint they're hitting. We don't want to do that. In this case, we're saying if it's not Melon, if you don't have a password that is Melon, I don't want you to continue. So it's going to halt the request. And this is another learning point. Any middleware on that queue of all the middleware can decide whether it wants to stop the request altogether. You can cancel it from there and just send the response. Or it can decide to continue to the next middleware by calling next. Let's go try it out again. Go back, passing Melon, and we get API running. And in here, we get welcome travelers. And then you could see the order of things happening, right? You see that this executed from the middleware first, and then we got into that get request on the endpoint. So the gatekeeper happened first, then this. This is what we call using middleware globally, meaning it will apply to every request that comes into the server, to any endpoint that comes into the server. Let's say that we have here another get route, and this is going to be to slash. Actually, yeah, let's call it secret. To slash secret. It's going to send the message back. So going to secret. We should get the nobody touches the dwarf. Cool. Now, I could use that middleware, and you're gonna go back, and I'm gonna give you the code, right? Because this is not super exciting. This is just regress and next, and you call next whenever. I want you to understand the concepts instead. We can also use middleware locally, meaning you could use it as part of one of the route handlers. So if I want to secure this, we can now say at this point right here, I want to execute. Remember that I told you yesterday, this could be an array of middleware or an array of route handlers, middleware. This is how it works. You could have it either make an array or just separate them by comma, doing it this way. I could say get keeper here, comma, and now this is what's going to happen. When a get to secret comes in, first this is going to run, and then I'm going to run the route handler. But only if gatekeeper calls next. So instead of using it globally, I'm going to comment this out. So it's no longer run on slash. So if we go back, we're no longer running this globally. So going back to slash, API running, no problem. But then when we go to secret, you have nobody tosses the door because you have the pass. Or what if I say melons instead and I hit that, then you shall not pass because you do not know the password. In review, a middleware function can be used both globally by using server.use and the middleware, or locally by sticking it before a route handler. And you could have as many as you want. Doesn't have to be 2, could be 3, 4, 5. You could have an endpoint that requires a few middlewares. And middleware is as simple as a function that has access to the request, the response, and this next argument that points to the next middleware on the chain, knowing that a route handler is also a piece of middleware. So whatever comes next, like in this case, could just be a route handler. And this piece of middleware can decide to take an action, like sending a response right there, or can decide to do something, maybe add, let's say that we could do something like rec.name or rec.message equals this. Okay, welcome travelers, or welcome to the mines of Monia. Okay, so you're saying that's the message, and I put that message in the request, which means that when I get to this endpoint after going through the gatekeeper, I could say send rec dot message. See the connection? The middleware is putting something on the request object and then just calling next. So after this successfully calls next, I have something new on the request. I have this message now on the request that was not there before. Let's call it welcome message, just in case there is another message in there. One never knows. I don't want to overwrite anything weird. So now saving that, we can come back to our server and refresh. Passing the right password, of course, so that we can hit that next. Here we go. Welcome to the Mines of Moria. Now, I want you to ask questions, and I'm going to give you this code instead of having you type it. Okay, here's the server. Questions? I'm going to get to that, Jordan, in a minute. Let me see if I'm missing any other questions up there. Is next one of the homies too? Yeah, it's the trio. It's the homies trio now. It's like the three amigos. Nice. Why would you want to specify the middleware if all requests would flow through that middleware anyways? Only if you configure it globally. If you use it globally, then all requests will flow. Any request that comes or middleware that comes after that server that you use, remember that order matters, will flow through that. But in some cases, like here, this is a good example. I have this endpoint that is secret. So I want to control access to only this endpoint, not the rest. You can imagine you have an application where the login and the register endpoints, anybody could go there. But then you have an admin area that only the admins can go there. And you can have that logic extracted out into a piece of middleware that restricts that. Does that help, Frank? And then you're going to say, you said the middleware function could be written in another folder. Could you show how that works? Of course. Let's create a gatekeeper middleware, right? So let's say that we have, and you can have this anywhere. So let's just create a folder here called middleware. Actually, let's call it gatekeeper, like so. Okay, and then create a new file here called gatekeeper middleware. Now inside of the gatekeeper middleware, this is where we have this function right here. Where should that function be placed in order to be able to require from the other file? And this is for Jordan now. Jordan, where should that be? It should be in my module.exports, right? Should be equal to that function. Only that we don't need the function. We could just make it like so. It's going to be a function. Okay. But we have this rec, res, and next. And whoever executes the function is going to pass those. In this case, it's going to be expressed. It's going to give our piece of middleware is going to give those 3 parameters too. Okay. So we can save that. Now we have this gatekeeper middleware is going to be our function. So how do we bring it in if we want to use it? First thing is we need to require it. Okay. So it's requiring here. It's going to be coming from like so. Now we have it. Is this on the run place? Let's see what are, we are on the server, sorry. We are inside the server, so we need to get out and then into the gatekeeper, so, because we're here on the server, and then into the gatekeeper middleware. Response. If we change the password to something that is invalid, then we get this shall not pass. So our middleware is working exactly the same. Let me show this in a different way so that you have both files. This is the server and this is the middleware. And this is how they connect. You require it, and here you export the function, and now you can use it anywhere in your file. No, the question is, where will you place that in order to require it on the other file, which is module export. That's good. All right, that's it. Custom middleware. So what are you going to do on your project today? There is a piece of middleware that we ask you to write related to middleware, and the rest is just continue to practice more of the same, more of creating endpoints. And of course, like always, the project is going to tell you what you need to have done for today. For today, you're going to have the endpoints, basic endpoints for the users, I think it is, and also a piece, only one single piece of middleware that is going to take some information from the request, do something with it to manipulate it, and then continue on to the rest of the middleware queue. If you don't have any more questions, then go have lunch and good luck on the project. All right. Looks like we're good. All right. Bye-bye.